Hello, everybody. This is Joe from PrepAgent. Sorry I'm a few minutes late here, but we are all good and ready to go. Hope you're having a good Monday, and let's begin. It's a hectic day today. Don't forget, taxes are due today. Boo, taxes. Yuck. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. We're all good? All right. At least Adrian can hear me, and Estella. Okay. Do not forget to join our group. Adrian, if you could post a link to our group, our real estate exam study group, that is hugely helpful. People help each other all the time there. That's a big thing for you guys to remember. And as always, do not forget to memorize your vocabulary. It all starts there. It starts with the vocab. Okay, that's where it all begins. So that being said, let's begin. And the first thing we see on the board is about listings. So what is a listing? Who here could tell me what is a listing? Anybody, anybody, anybody? What is a listing? Who could tell me what is a listing? It is a contract. What kind of contract? It's an employment contract. That's right, Matt. It's also a personal service contract. That would be accurate as well. It's a personal service contract. Good. So you got your listing, which is a personal service contract, and you're hired to do something. What are you hired to do? Who knows what you're hired to do when you get a listing? Anybody? Anybody? What are you hired to do? You are hired to find a buyer. You are not hired to sell the house. Big misconception. People always think they're there to sell the house. Why are you not hired to sell the house? Why are you hired to find a buyer, but not there to sell the house? What do you guys think? Well, very simply said, because it's not your house. You can't sell it. So you could bring a buyer that's a perfect buyer, but if the seller has a change of heart, they're the one who signs their line on the contract, signs their name on the contract, signs their name on the line of the contract. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, it's their house. And that's very important. You remember that when you're practicing real estate and for your exam as well. Why is that important to note? Because if you sign an exclusive listing and you find a buyer under the exact terms of the seller's conditions, and you worked really hard and did open houses every weekend for 2 months and spent money on advertising online and spent money on sending flyers, spent money on those little hors d'oeuvres for the open house, and spent money on gas going back and forth, and your time was spent up, and you found this perfect buyer, then the seller just says, meh, I don't feel like doing this anymore. It's a really good looking guy, moved down the street. Think I want to get to know him. So I'm going to stay. Not into it. Or it's worse if they say, yeah, I didn't really want to sell. I just did that because I was curious about this process. I want to see how much I could get for my house. But I really wasn't that keen on selling the property. Psych, my bad. In that situation, what could happen? Ooh, congratulations, JJ. What could happen in that scenario? What do you guys think? You could still get paid. You could still get paid because, going back to the original point, you were there to find a buyer and you found a buyer. Now, in actual practice, good luck on suing the person to get the money. You kind of have to cut your losses in real life. It has to be a real extreme situation to pursue that in real life. But technically and legally speaking, you earned your commission. But like I said, in real life, you got to do your due diligence to make sure you don't end up in that situation. But we're not talking about real life just yet. We're talking about passing the exam. Okay, everybody got it? I just wanted to make the point that you're hired to find a buyer. Okay, so Jamel says, isn't it an exclusive right to sell listing? So let's take a step back. It's a good question. All right, so you have your exclusive listing. Okay, what does exclusive listing mean? Who knows what that means? What does an exclusive listing mean? So you got the listing. The exclusive listing means there's only one licensee hired, only one real estate licensee hired, okay? Now, when you have an exclusive listing, there's two types of exclusive listings. Do you guys know what they are? There's two types of exclusive listings. What are they? What are the two types of exclusive listings? So you got your exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency. So Cassandra, the most common to answer your question is the exclusive right to sell listing. Okay, both exclusive listings have only one broker. But what's the difference between an exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency? Who knows? Who knows what the difference is between that exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency? Who knows the answer to that? What's the difference between an exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency? So they both have only one broker. Okay, and the exclusive right to sell means you get paid regardless of how the buyer came to the transaction. Exclusive agency means there's only one broker, but if the seller brings the buyer, you get nothing. You get nothing. Has everybody got that? Okay. And if a listing is not exclusive, what's it called? So it is not exclusive. If you could have multiple brokers, what would that be called? The listing has multiple brokers, what would that be called? That'd be called an open listing or a non-exclusive listing. Okay, it means same thing, non-exclusive or open listing. Okay. Now, in an open listing, you can have multiple brokers. So we just discussed the open listing, the exclusive right to sell listing, and the exclusive agency listing. Which one of those three would you not have to prove that you were the procuring cause of the buyer? Which one of those three does it not matter who brought the buyer? So we just named three types of listings. Which one of those three would it not be important? That'd be exclusive right to sell. Good. Which one of those three does not need a termination date? Which one of those three does not need a termination date? Which one of those listings does not need a termination date? And the answer would be open listing, because an open listing, if I hire you, if I don't like you, I can move on to somebody else whenever I want. Whereas with an exclusive listing, where there's exclusive agency, exclusive right to sell, if I don't like you, I'm stuck with you. So therefore, there needs to be a termination date on the contract, okay? Open listings do not need a termination date, okay? But exclusive listings, whether exclusive right to sell or exclusive agency, need that termination date because I'm binded to one person. Okay, the most common one is an exclusive right to sell listing. All right, Leslie Acevedo asks, what is a net listing? A net listing is something that's illegal in many states or frowned upon in others, and that's because there's an inherent conflict of interest in that a net listing means you get paid above and beyond a set amount. So if a house is $500,000, you bring an offer of $550,000, you get paid 50 grand. Why is it illegal in many states? And those that's not illegal, highly frowned upon. Because if an offer comes in for 500 grand, you get nothing, which is not fair to the agent because you did all that work, you get nothing. So there could be a conflict of interest there, and it's very susceptible to people having to jeopardize their morals and values when having a real estate contract. And when I say jeopardize their integrity, their loyalty, their morals and values, what am I referring to? when you have an agency. So when I say as an agent, you have an obligation of loyalty, honesty, all those good things, there's a word that you must know. Who knows what that word is? There's a word that comes up. Fiduciary. Nice job, Melanie. Your fiduciary responsibilities, your fiduciary duty, acting as a fiduciary. So a net listing really strains that fiduciary relationship because you're at a conflict with the seller, because when you bring in an offer, all right, the seller could accept it and you may end up getting nothing or a very small amount. So you may be inclined to reject that offer in hopes to get a larger offer, even though it is not to the benefit of your client. Okay. So it violates fiduciary duty. That's why many states just straight up say not happening, illegal, not allowed to do it. Okay. How am I doing so far? Everybody with me? I did a lot of talking there, but you know, I want to put everything in context. And sometimes I think you guys could do questions on your own, but you can't hear my babble when you're by yourself. Well, actually you can. There's recordings. How many of you guys hear my babble all the time and I'm like in your sleep? Can you guys hear my voice in your sleep? Kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. And you guys checking out the new Star Wars? New Star Wars coming out. Very exciting. Okay, sorry. Did not mean to get off topic. I'm not even sure if Obi-Wan's in the new Star Wars. Okay, so with that being said, all right, let's look at this first question on the board. In order to be valid, all exclusive listings must include A, permission from the listing broker to appoint subagents. B, a dragnet clause. Automatic renewal, a definite date of expiration. Please do not circle dragnet clause. I don't know what that is. And we just discussed this before. They need that expiration date. What listing did we say does not need that date of expiration? Which listing does not need that date of expiration? What did we say? That open listing. It's true. When you guys take that test, you're going to hear that my voice, cattle, cattle, cows, move, move. And you're like, Joe, is that you? I'm with you. Move. Okay. So the next question on the board. Salesperson Andrew receives an offer to purchase, which is accompanied by a $2,000 earnest money deposit in the form of a personal note. Which is true in that case? A, the offer should indicate the deposit is the form of a note. B, Andrew has breached his agent's duty to the seller. C, Andrew should return the note and ask the purchaser to give him a check for the same amount. Or D, the resulting contracts will be voidable at the seller's option. Leslie, make sure you change your settings to 720 HD, and that'll make sure everything's more clear. It's that little gearbox on the bottom right. And the answer here is the offer should indicate the deposit is the form of a note. Okay. Do you guys know what is a promissory note? Who knows what a promissory note is? Anybody know what a promissory note is? What's a promissory note? What is a promissory note? It is a promise to pay. It's evidence of that debt. Who gives the promissory note? Who gives the promissory note? Anybody? Anybody? Who gives that promissory note? The mortgagor or the trustor? Good. Okay. So it's the mortgagor or the trustor. They're the giver. They're the borrower. And in order to borrow money, they first have to give that promissory note. Then the lender gets that and they give them money. Okay. All right. The promissory note is evidence of the debt. What is a deposit? A good faith deposit, earnest money deposit, call it what you want. What is it? What's a deposit? What do you guys think? So deposit, yep, that earnest money deposit, what is that? So it shows that you're serious. It shows that you are serious about your offer. Just think about deposits. If I want to get married and I say, will you marry me, to any of the ladies on the chat here, if I said that, you guys would not think I'm serious. You'd be like, what? He's not serious. If I just got down on me and said, I love you with all my heart, marry me, you'd say he's not serious. But if I showed up with a big fat ring and then I did it, the whole room would go silent. Everything would change. And you would go, oh my God, he's serious, right? Because I just opened up a big deposit. Because if we get engaged and during that beautiful honeymoon period, I move on and unfaithful, then would I get that deposit back? Probably not. I would lose it. It would probably end up being thrown in the river or something terrible. Right, guys? You get the idea? It's evidence that you're serious about your offer. The earnest money deposit functions in the same way. I know it's not the most romantic way to talk about it, but that's kind of what it is, right? Okay. All right, here we go. Moving right along. Blockbusting is best described as an intent by insurance companies to refuse to issue homeowners policies to a certain residents of the city. B, by banks to refuse loans to homeowners in certain segments of the city. C, to form guerrilla bands to use violent action to integrate neighborhoods. Or D, to panic a neighborhood into thinking property values will decline due to unwanted persons moving in. Okay, the answer is D, and this is a violation of a certain act. What act is this violating? What act is this violating? Who knows? Anybody? Anybody? Federal fair housing. Good. And what year did fair housing come into play? Who knows that answer? 3, 2, 1, go. Who knows that answer? Fair housing came into play in the year, what do you guys think? 1968. 1968. Good. Remember what I said about 1968? I don't care if it asks you how old you are, when you were born, how many kids you have. You will circle 1968. If it asks you how many states are in the Union, how many countries are in the world, how many capitals exist in Zimbabwe, the answer is always going to be 1968. Promise me that if you see the word 1968, you will circle it. Everybody promise, I will circle 1968. Everybody got it? Brad, if you see 1986 and 1968 in the same options, then you could hit me over the head. But it will not be in the same question, I promise. Okay, 1968, 1968. Everybody go with 1968. It's going to be the answer. And if you ask me, well, what's the question going to be? I'm going to say, my question is, why you ask me what the question is? Just circle 1968. And when you see 1968 and you circle it, you're going to be like, man, that Joe, great guy. Love him. He's the best. You'll be high-fiving my Obi-Wan voice in the corner. Okay. Moving right along here. If a real estate licensee were trying to persuade people to list or to sell their property by telling them that members of another ethnic group were moving into their neighborhood and it would be to their advantage to list or to sell, it would be an example of all the following except A, panic selling, B, duress, C, blockbusting, or D, illegal conduct. Ooh, this is a tricky one. Notice that word accept, everybody. Okay. The answer is duress. Why? Because duress is a terrible thing. It's a bad thing. It's forcing people to do things they don't want to do. It has to do with threats and pushing people and not good stuff, but it's not discrimination. Everybody get that? These other three things are discrimination. And duress is not always illegal. It can be frowned upon and make a contract voidable, but it's not always illegal. Does everybody get that? It can make a contract voidable, like me going to you in a contract saying, sign it, sign it, sign it, sign it, sign it, and being super annoying about it. That could put you under duress, and in court can maybe make it voidable. I'm not necessarily going to jail for it, right? The other three have to do with discrimination. Big difference, and those are blatantly, flat out illegal, right? So a lot of you guys didn't see that word accept, right? Who missed that? Who missed that word accept at the bottom? Got to be careful there. Okay, now for a lot of you guys here, you are new here. Today is an open webinar, which is why I have a lot of people here. So just so you guys are aware, for our premium members, these chats are a lot smaller, so it's a lot easier to interact with you. And they have all the webinars on replay via their control panel. Whereas if you're not a premium member, you don't have all the webinars available on replay. And obviously, there's a lot more people in the chat, so it's a lot more difficult to interact. Okay, moving right along. So for those of you guys who are new, asking about what state this applies to, on the webinars, I do my best to apply the material to things that apply to every state on these webinars, especially the public ones. I do not get into state-specific content. So I believe Blessed asked me, will this help with the Virginia license? Yes. It won't help you with all the stuff for Virginia, but it helps you with the content that applies to everybody. For example, what we just went over with blockbusting and panic peddling, panic settling, that is a federal law. That is not state-specific. Everybody understand that? Federal fair housing, it's right there in the name. The Fair Housing Act is a federal law. Everybody's got to know that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I go over in the webinars and make sure everybody understands. Everybody got that? So people say, how do you help everybody's state? I'll readily admit, I can't help you with every single thing for each state, but there is a large portion of content that we all have to know. For example, what I just said, things that are like federal laws. Leslie said redlining, that's also a federal law. So we all have to know about redlining. All right, so everybody got it? So if you're worried about me covering your state specifically, the stuff I cover applies to everybody, okay? Now, Leslie asked me about redlining. Who could tell me what redlining is? That is a federal law, so everybody needs to know it, whether you're in New Hampshire, Maine, California, Wisconsin, or Texas. What is redlining? Redlining is discriminating when you're making a loan. Basically, you lend to certain areas, and you pick those areas because of the racial or ethnic composition of that neighborhood. And that as well is a violation of fair housing. And by the way, you guys know that a lot of stuff applies to everybody because all of you know the answers, or at least many of you know the answers, regardless of what state you're in. So obviously, you know, we try and cover something that's familiar to everybody. And if you don't know the answers, do not worry. You will get there. Everybody's got to start somewhere. And honestly, some of this is going to be more difficult for some of you than it is for others. That's just the way it is. And some of you, selling a home will be more difficult than it will be for others. There's different skills involved with getting this career off the ground. And all of you will be better at different things. Okay. On the board, we see a licensed real estate person placed a blind ad in a local newspaper. A blind ad does not properly A, identify the broker, B, given the selling price, C, give the address of the property, or D, identify the seller. And the answer is A, identify the broker. Ooh, capital letters. Why are you yelling at me? Anybody else feel that way? When somebody writes in capital letters, it feels like they're yelling at you. When they write a text in capitals, you're like, whoa, calm down. I'm right here. No need to get all angry. Just kidding. I know that wasn't your intention. Am I alone with that? When somebody accidentally leaves the caps lock on when they type to you and they're like, oops, I left the caps lock on. It feels like they're screaming at you. And you immediately get defensive. You're like, hey, no reason to use capitals. A little extreme here. Just ask you to pick up the milk from the supermarket. Don't need to get all angry. Okay, here we go. What actions are required of agents regarding material facts? A, should be disclosed to serious buyers. B, they are deemed confidential between the agent and the client and should be protected. C, they should generally be disclosed to the public, although in some instances they may be considered minor or confidential and not be disclosed. Or D, must always be disclosed. Who knows what material facts are? Anybody know what material facts are? What do they mean by material facts? Like, what does that mean? Sounds like a fancy word. All these unnecessarily fancy words. What is it? Fancy words. Material facts are things that should be readily known by anybody. For example, if you see a hole in the roof, you say, there's a hole in the roof. That's a material fact, okay? Things that can be easily seen by a basic look around with your two eyes, your nose, or your ears, okay? Those are what material facts are. Things that are obvious or should be known. Basically, things that you cannot get away with saying, oh, there's no way I could have known that. All right? Those are not material facts. But when it's obvious you should know it, then you need to disclose it. Caroline Martin assures a real estate salesperson, Abby Benton, that the home she's selling has hardwood floors throughout. This appears to be true since it is exposed in all the rooms but two of the bedrooms, which have wall-to-wall carpeting. Abby passes these assurances on to the buyer, who later discovered that neither of the bedrooms has hardwood. What, if anything, is Abby guilty of? A, she's guilty of misrepresentation. B, she's guilty of fraud. C, she's guilty of anything since she relied on the owner's assurance. Or D, she's guilty of commission. And Adrian, we are guilty of not putting a question mark there. Whoops. Our little autocorrect there in the PrepAgent system. I know, so embarrassing. Who wrote that question, huh? It was me. My bad. Okay, she is guilty of misrepresentation. Adrian's grammar is amazing. It's incredible. I'm the one with the terrible grammar. You guys notice, you will notice since Adrian's been helping us a lot and working with us, the grammar and spelling on our questions and our worksheets have been vastly improved. As long as it's specified as part of his or her duties, is it legal for an unlicensed salaried assistant to solicit listings for the broker? A, no soliciting listings is the exclusive responsibility of the broker. B, no active participation in real estate transactions requires a license. Or D, yes, if it is part of a written job description. Or D, yes, because she's being paid a salary, not commission. Amber says, how often do you guys add new questions in the exams? Constant, Amber. It's a constant modification and trying to improve. We're never going to be perfect, but we're doing our best and working on it every day. So we constantly try and evolve it and modify and improve based upon our research, our feedback from you guys, and just different things. So it's a constant process. And I have to admit, not a very exciting one. Ooh. Amber's yelling. You are doing great. Thank you, Amber. Leslie, solicit listing means trying to get a listing. A listing broker is signed a sales contract on a house. The broker then noticed a crumbling wall in the basement. Which of the following should the broker inform about the wall? A, buyer, seller, and mortgage company. B, both buyer and seller. C, buyer only. Or D, seller only. And the answer is B, both buyer and seller. Good. What is RESPA? A standard for access and accommodations for persons with disabilities. B, a low-income housing program. C, a federal anti-discrimination statute. Or D, a standard for closing procedures. And the answer is D, a standard for closing procedures. All right, we got one more, and then we're going to wrap it up for the day, and you guys can get back to worrying about your taxes. Boo, taxes. Everybody write boo, taxes. Which act requires that reasonable accommodation be made in public? A, Equal Opportunity Act. B, Fair Housing Act. C, Civil Rights Act. Or D, American with Disabilities Act. And the answer is D. You know what? Since it's tax day, let's do a few tax questions really quick, a little encore for you guys. So I'm going to do a little rapid fire tax questions that pertain to your real estate exam. Everybody write ready, and when you write ready, I will fire off these questions in a lightning round fashion. Everybody write ready. Okay, and here we go. Ad valorem. What is ad valorem Latin for? Ad valorem. Go. What's ad valorem? Ad valorem. Ad valorem is according to value. Good. Tax shelter. What are tax shelters for? Tax shelters. Tax shelters. Tax shelters. What is tax shelters for? Tax shelters for income tax. Good. Okay. In a 1031 tax deferred exchange, how many days do you have to identify a property? In a 1031 tax deferred exchange, how many days do you have to identify a property? Who knows? How many days do you have to identify a property? 45. Good. In a 1031 tax deferred exchange, how many days do you have to close the deal? How many days do you have to close the deal? 45 days to identify and 180 days to close. Good. Excellent, guys. Property tax, specific lien or general lien. A property tax, is that a specific lien or general lien? Property tax, specific lien or general lien? Property tax would be a specific lien, a specific lien. Income tax, general lien or specific lien. Income tax, general lien or specific lien. Income tax, general lien or specific lien. Income tax would be a general lien. Good. All right, guys, that's it for today. Nice job on that tax speed round. You guys are ready to go. I hope you enjoyed it today. This is Joe from PrepAgent, as always, with Adrian on the chat. Okay. He is the greatest chat monitor ever. And we will see you guys soon. If you have any questions, it's best to contact us through the website. You guys could try contacting us through our social media outlets like Instagram and Facebook. But we'll be honest, it's hard to monitor all our messages when they come from different sources. So we'll always check it through the website. If you message us through the social media outlets, yes, we'll definitely try and get back to you, but it's a little more tricky. All right? Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.